Welcome back. Season 3, episode 3. Majid, wake up.
I'm here.
You know what?
I'm
I thought for
planting. I'm
one
planting. I'm sowing.
you're sewing, okay. Like sewing as in needle and thread sewing,
Yeah, I'm
because
sowing some
I think you might
seeds.
have got the wrong memo.
I'm sowing some
I
seeds.
thought maybe for once I'll catch you off guard, but no. So what? So
So
what,
what?
Maj?
So what? It's a good question. You know what? When you told me about this particular topic, I thought, you know what? It's really interesting. But for me, I can't really, I can't answer that question just like that. You know, I don't think anyone can. And if anyone does, I don't think they've truly understood the question. Because personally, I think before we can understand or decide what to sow, because the what is an action, yeah, to sow is an action,
Yeah.
but any action without purpose is not an action. The question is, why would you take any action in the first place?
Do you think it's always a decision? Do you think we because I know some people just do it automatically, don't they, without realizing that. You hear the term a lot, reap what you sow. Yeah. But how
Yeah,
many people don't really know what they're sowing? Does that make sense?
yeah, and I think
We-
usually it's because people haven't understand the purpose of their action.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that again. Sowing for me is an action, whether it's on a small level, whether it's with a view to something in the future, whether it's the present, whether it's the midterm or the long term or the short term. Any action, if it doesn't have a purpose, then you're going to run into trouble, aren't you? If you haven't understood the purpose, you're in worse trouble. Because a lot of the times you have people who will make comments, who will say things in discussions or arguments, and there was no purpose to what they said.
Yeah.
And just blown themselves out of water, haven't they?
Well, they have, but at the same time, they're gonna reap what they've just sowed, and even though what they sowed isn't what they meant to, but the fruits of that are gonna probably slap them across the face at some point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Generally, that's the
absolutely.
way an argument goes, isn't it? It escalates, but it's only from what you've contributed, from what you've done.
Yeah, 100%. And another aspect of this, I think we have to look at it from a different prism as well, because a lot of the times what people do is when they take action on anything, they have either not thought it through very well, or what they're about to embark upon hasn't been calculated with everything around it. Now, sometimes that works in people's favors. You know, you hear about stories when people who haven't really thought about or considered or understood or appreciated the risk element involved in what they're about to embark upon. But because they didn't, they became successful in business. Yeah. They threw money at something they didn't truly understand, but because they did at the right time, you know, it worked out for them. So they sowed something. They had sown something at that particular time, which worked out in their favor. Because, you know, people talk about business, good business practices. It's a lot about timing, and the timing's got to be right. And yeah, sometimes it is. I agree. In fact, a lot of the times it is. But sometimes people, they end up falling in the right time and taking the right action without even realizing it, and they reap the rewards.
Yeah.
But can we apply the same thing to them?
Is it? It's not the same.
That's the question. Can we apply the same thing to them?
I suppose the reward is the same, but that feel good factor, that feeling of achievement, is not quite there if you haven't actually.
I don't know. How can you be so sure? How can you be so sure? Because maybe they did set out to achieve it, but they didn't. It was an accidental thing. They didn't really understand it, but they still achieved it, thinking that it was down to their calculations, but it might not have been. Simra says intentions and purpose is key. So with what intent are you sowing anything is going to be the core question. If you haven't understood your intent and the purpose behind sowing whatever you're going to sow,
Mm.
what's the likelihood that what you're sowing is going to be fruitful?
Mm. So, what do you make of accidental millionaires then? Because the intention, I suppose, is always to be a millionaire. Oh, well, for most people, the intention is always to be well off and wealthy. But these days, I'm not saying it's easy, but you can accidentally strike it lucky, can't you?
Yeah, I guess you could. I mean, let's just take cryptocurrency as an example. The people who invested in it at the beginning without really understanding what the platform was about, what blockchain it actually is, it's quite a complicated, phenomenon. It's a new, well, I don't know how new you could say it's as a phenomenon, but it was a complicated thing to grasp, even for some of the most intellectual people or
Mm.
intelligent people, I should say. But even then, those people who took that risk and invested and but are they really millionaires if it's in digital form? And that's another debate altogether, isn't it? And how
Well,
you
you're not. Yeah, you're right. Until you cash out, it's not anything, is it? Okay, so crypto, for example.
yeah, or any
You,
other business where if people have become accidental millionaires, let's just say won the lottery, can you give them any credit? Can you say it was because of any of their smart decisions? Some people say, okay, it was a smart decision for them to have bought a lottery ticket at that time. But again, you know what I mean?
okay. Can you give them credit? Did they, have they sort of achieved what they set out to? Are they a millionaire? Yeah. Is that what they wanted? Yeah. Can you give them credit? Not really. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
isn't it?
not the same, is
Are you going to invite a millionaire because let's just say you're organizing an event, you want to learn from someone, right?
it? Mm.
And you're organizing an event where you want a keynote speaker to come and speak, and the criteria is it has to be a millionaire, right? So if somebody is going to be invited on this platform to speak, then
Mm.
whether it's a millionaire through hard work, graft, business, smart business decisions, sacrifices, and all that kind of stuff, or
Mm.
whether it's somebody who won the lottery,
Yeah,
who
you
are
know
you going to
which one
want to
you're going to
listen
pick,
to?
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
and this is where it comes back to intent. You know, the intention, I suppose, to some extent, the method, the commitment and dedication.
mm.
Look, anybody could eat a mango. I was going to say apple, but it's mango season, so we'll go with mango. Anybody could eat a mango and drop the seed, right?
Mm.
Um,
And then
and it just so
a
happens
mango
to,
plant.
yeah, and walk away and come back after whatever years, and it just so happens to become um, a mango tree. I was going to say apple tree, but that wouldn't work either, would it?
Yeah, but are you
It's
saying
not the
then? Are you
same.
saying then it has to be intentional? Is that what you're saying? To be given credit for? I mean,
Look,
why are we even? Why are we even? Why is credit even a criteria in this?
it's not a criteria, but I think the question is, would you give someone credit if it was done accidentally, and also, would you have an accidental millionaire on as a keynote speaker? I would say the answer to both is probably not, because
It
it's not a
depends.
method that you can teach. You can't
Yeah.
repeat it, you know?
Mm. Well, it
Um,
depends. If the audience is one which has already got a substantial amount of money and they're looking to do something with that money, and this accidental millionaire, by way of winning the lottery, ended up using that money to double, quadruple, whatever,
yeah,
then obviously there were some smart decisions that this person made in that period of time to multiply his wealth or her wealth. Yeah.
yeah, it's true. Well, I think
Mm.
an example comes to mind, and it might not be the best of examples, but um, I happened to come across the roast of Donald Trump not long ago, and somebody got up and said, rate this guy. He started from nothing. He started from the bottom. All he had was like a $10 million loan from daddy or something. I was like, okay.
This is it, isn't it? Look, this is why I say the question so what to sow is not an easy question to answer until you understand the purpose for which you're going to sow anything. Yeah.
Mm.
To sow something means you're taking action. If that action doesn't have a purpose behind it, then it's not even inaction. It's no action. I don't know if that even makes sense to the general public, but it's because inaction means not doing anything, obviously, but no action means you've done something, but it equates to zero.
Yeah.
So, living a life of no actions is like a nomadic life, without a purpose, without a destination, without a goal.
Yeah.
Before we answer the question whether, or what to sow, I think we need to answer the question, what is the purpose in the bit? What's the destination? What's the goal? What's going to be the purpose of taking action to sow anything? For example, if my goal is to become, I don't know, a lawyer, and I'm a young lad and I'm like going to school and whatnot, then you can ask the question or answer the question, what do I need to sow to reap the rewards of becoming a practicing lawyer? Yeah. And then you've got to get that destination to begin with and work backwards to understand the steps that are normal steps to be taken. Now, if you're smart, you will think and look at and investigate what those steps are, but you'll always try to understand the finer nuances behind the smaller steps in between, which give you an edge over your competitors. This competitive field to get into, especially once you've qualified, and to get a training contract as a solicitor, it's not an easy task. Yeah,
no, definitely not.
So if you're looking for a profession as a child, looking at a profession, and then not even a child, a young person, I should say, right? Because I don't think 16-year-olds are just children
Okay,
anymore.
so let's take the example of the lawyer who's obviously gone through the academic route, had to achieve certain level of grades and struggle and everything, and they finally ended up at a good firm. Yeah. Now they've achieved what they set out to, and they could sort of replicate that. They could, I would go as far as say, look, that's inspirational. That story, that path, that struggle. So let's put the lawyer next to someone like Joey Essex.
Who's that?
Exactly. He's I don't even know what he's famous for, but I know he's famous and he's pretty
I
loaded.
have no idea. I haven't got a clue
I think
who
he
it is.
was some sort of accidental celebrity. Okay, so maybe not the best example because it only works if you know the guy, right? But I'm sure the people listening will probably know of him.
Who knows
Now,
Joey Essex? If you know who Joey Essex is, put a comment in and let us know, or put a link.
Yeah. Now, there's the lawyer has obviously planted the seed, watered it, looked after it, nourished it, the whole thing, grew it, yeah? Whereas somebody who's just had maybe a video go viral or been caught on camera doing something, it's not the same, but I guess, I don't know. Have they both achieved what they set out to? Is it the same level of credit? Is it the same?
No, of course not. Look, on the one hand, you've got somebody who's got a lifelong ambition to achieve something, and they're setting continue. Look, if the purpose is strong, then it's not about just setting one seed, because that seed is going to be needing to be continually nurtured, watered, fed, given the right nutrients. And if your purpose is strong, you're going to do that. You'll get up at early in the morning because it's a part of that bigger purpose. If you don't have that bigger purpose, you're not going to be asked. You're not going to be bothered to do it, are you? Right? If you are just wanting to be a simple millionaire accidentally, then it's going to be accidental, and then you're going to probably, people like that will probably just spend it as quick as they got it.
Yeah. Well, we see lottery millionaires, lottery winners. You hear of them in years to come thinking that they're back to working their job. Wasn't there, I think there was a bin man who won, I think it was 16, however many millions, and within 2 or 3 or 4 years he was back in his job because he'd blown it all.
Well, yeah, and then you'll get some people who will not want to quit their job because their purpose is something other than
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
And I've
this-
and I've heard of stories where people have won the lottery. They've got the money, but they'll still continue doing the normal jobs that
yeah.
they did before because
I
the
think there was
purpose
a
wasn't.
bricklayer that just won it
Mm,
quite recently. See, the only way I know is these sort of headlines, they tend to pop up in the news, don't they? And
mm,
that's how you hear about it. Whereas if somebody's really planned it, really struggled, really grafted over years and years
mm,
to achieve something, maybe it's a property portfolio, maybe it's, landed dream job, whatever. We're
mm.
not going to hear about that, are we? You're not
Put it
going
in
to hear.
put it into context again. I
So,
didn't quite understand that question.
okay, young lad, bin man, whatever, yeah, he wins millions.
Mm,
It's in the news, isn't it?
mm,
But you've got the other young lad, the lawyer, who's gone to college and university and ended up at a top firm and is maybe making more money than the lottery winner.
mm.
You're not going to hear about him.
Yeah,
I mean,
because it's not
and
sensational news.
it is
It's hard
sensational.
work,
It
graft,
absolutely is.
and
Yeah.
this person got the results right.
Mm,
Whereas it's an unlikely event for an unlikely candidate resulted in unlikely results,
yeah.
which is what's so sensational about that
So,
news, isn't it?
do you think most people understand what to sow and set out with
You know
intent?
what? No, I don't think. Well, from my observations, I think sometimes what you what you go at to sow evolves. It depends on what stage of life you're in and
Mm,
what you're setting out to do. When you're a younger person, you may set out to, study for a career. Let's just take that as an example.
mm,
What you sow at that stage in your life is going to be something completely different to when you are a parent, for example, and you've got responsibility of children and you're wanting some kind of security for your children. And then
mm,
what you sow then is going to be completely different. So it's going to evolve with life. Again, whatever you sow is going to have some kind of a purpose for it. But if you're coasting in life and
mm.
you don't have a purpose, then you're going to struggle to sow anything and then nurture it, because whatever you sow, you're going to have to nurture it if it's
What
going
would
to,
you
if
say is
you
an
want
average
some
kind of
meaningful
age
results.
nowadays in the world that we're in today? What would you say is a perfectly normal age to coast up until?
You know what? For some parents, I don't think, because again, depending on your age, for some parents, it's unacceptable to coast at any age. Even from the beginning, you need to have, there'll be, the life will be regimented. There'll be a structure in their day.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. They'll be conditioned to live their lives as young children in a certain way according to a criteria, whether that's some kind of a diary or a schedule. Again, at that age in their lives, their parents are sowing something that you need
Mm,
to have some kind of a schedule in life that you live by in order to avoid just coasting. Yeah.
mm.
Now, the question is coasting a good thing or a bad thing? That's a different debate altogether,
Did you
right?
ever coast?
I think everyone coasts at some point in their life, just whether it's for a few hours, few days, few months, few years. At some point or another, people find themselves coasting until they realize, or they have a realization that they need to do something different. And even some people who do have that realization, they can't be
Mm.
asked to do anything different because life's all
So,
right.
look, let's say at a young age, obviously your parents are doing it for you. They're sending you to school. Well, they should be sending you to school,
Mm,
or educating you,
mm,
introducing you to sports. Seeing if you've got a knack for maybe one particular sport, maybe go
mm,
down the athletic route, trying to pick up whether academically there's any subject that you seem to be excelling at,
mm.
keeping an eye out. So that sort of thing. And that sort of shapes most of the time what you end up doing after the age of 16, right? By that time. So
I don't
a
know.
lot of the parents,
Some people rebel completely from what they've been
yeah.
doing until the age
But
of
generally
16.
speaking, so with perhaps the parents, the guardians, the teachers' input, along with how you feel yourself, that kind of shapes you at 16 to 18 to whatever until you complete your studies or, scholarship or whatever you decide to do. What about later in life? Like you said, you know how what you sow evolves. Yeah,
Mm.
it does change, doesn't it? It's not to say that you hit a certain age, you've hit 30 years old, and you can only now reap what you've already sowed. It's not like that. It's not too late at all to plant new seeds, choose a completely new path. And I know people older than us much learning a new language, changing
Dude,
career
my
completely.
eldest brother, he graduated at the age of 50. He went to university in his late 40s
Yeah,
just because all his kids were graduates.
yeah,
He's like a really scientific kind of a guy. You know, in his younger days, he even had the curly hair like Einstein, right? Even
yeah.
now, he grows things using hydroponics, like out of season fruits and veg and plants and all sorts of things using clay
Okay.
balls and all sorts of different lighting. It's amazing. So yeah, his ambition was to learn something new. And when after his kids had graduated, he was like, "You think you're smart now, do you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's smart." And so he went at that age and went and graduated in electronic engineering or something like that. So yeah, people's purpose or people's desire
Mm,
to reap something changes with time and experiences. You can't negate experiences in all this because not everybody has the same amount of time in life, but also not everybody has the same kinds of awakenings depending on different kinds of experiences. Yeah.
mm,
And when you have the different experiences, sometimes you come to realize, hang on, what I was setting out to do isn't really what I feel is my calling. So
mm,
whilst I may have sown all these seeds in my life up till now to achieve X, Y, and Z, I don't feel that I belong there, but it's my calling actually belongs somewhere else. But it doesn't mean to say what they've sown or what they've reaped of what they'd sown up till then had been a waste, because chances
mm.
are where they got to then, or the realization that that evolved and that came about in their minds, was only a consequence of what they had reaped and sown up till then.
Up till
Had they
then,
not done that, then they may not have had that realization in the future.
yeah. It's amazing. It's so surprising walking along which path can open up a completely different door, completely different avenue, completely different path altogether. You know,
Hmm.
it's not always that straightforward that, okay, in order to be this, you have to do this, 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 you have to be completely well rounded. Some people get into business
Hmm.
having never gone to college or not even passed a GCSE, you know?
But yeah, this
Um,
is this is the point, isn't it? I mean, Selma raises a very valid point. She says, "What about expectations of parents? That's a major when it comes to sharing our future." No, of
I think
course.
it is.
I think anything we've sown as young people or children or plants or seeds which have been sown into us have
Mm,
mainly been through our parents.
yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah.
And so, do we then become imitations of other people like our parents, or do we find our own individuality? Because
Mm.
most people struggle to find their own individual self.
Well, the thing is, though, I don't want to get too philosophical or anything, but to some extent, Maj, we are seeds, aren't we, of our parents?
Of course, yeah, good
So,
point.
of course, we're going to carry certain things, certain qualities, characteristics. Forget about DNA. I'm not being scientific. I'm not talking about the DNA and stuff, yeah, because my big nose is inherited. That's just the way it goes, isn't it? Um,
Oh, we'll not talk about what we've
but
inherited from.
when it comes to career and stuff, I always believe that you know the kids that are
Mm.
sort of, what's the word? I don't want to say push. I'm going to say pushed. Heck, be it controversial as it may. Yeah. So
Groomed.
yeah, groomed, pushed, nudged, steered into a certain direction. And we see a lot of this in the Asian culture, the Asian
Oh,
community.
all the
You know,
time. If
it's
you're not a doctor, engineer,
yeah,
an
it's
architect, or a lawyer, you're a nobody, or an
yeah.
accountant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
almost a disappointment or something, whether they say
yeah.
it or not. But the fact that it's so strongly urged for you to do that particular career path, um,
Because some careers are even like they're shunned. They're like beneath them. Like,
yeah,
the irony is most of the Asians who migrated to the Western world, they did manual labor jobs.
yeah,
Yeah. uh, and most of their parents or their grandparents weren't very well educated. Yet the
yeah,
expectations of their own children are so high that they deem any other career as really bad. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was only around 10 at the time. I remember we had a death in the family, and some relatives came to visit from High Wycombe to see my brother-in-law. And my brother-in-law's English is very weak, right? So he was quite new in the UK at the time.
mm,
So this person, he was sat in the front room, and my brother-in-law was asking him, what do you do for a living? What ke karobar karte ho? And
mm,
he goes, hairdresser, like that, right? And my brother-in-law was confused. He goes, Baji fir boliye, like repeat yourself again. What was it that you said? He goes, hairdresser, and he just sat there like that, like I'm not going to interpret for you, even though I know the language, right?
yeah.
So you could tell he didn't want to say the Punjabi equivalent of it,
It
right?
really does not
And
translate well, does it? Is that because of,
no,
you know what? I don't think it's because of the word itself. I think it's because of the sort of stigma around it and the way that it's said.
again, it's conditioned and learned behavior from
Yeah,
his parents. And this learned behavior is damaging in the future. When you say it with the pride,
yeah,
"Assi bhai nahi aanda kaam karne hai." Say
yeah.
it in Punjabi. I'm a barber.
Yeah.
I do, I do this work. And I couldn't understand at the time what was the issue, And then
Mm,
as I've grown up, it's clicked that there was this stigma around being anything other than the white
mm.
collar professions. So you think to yourself, well,
But
if
that's
you
that's
took
that's
ownership.
only for the white collar professionals. Have you noticed? So in a lot of time when the parents are barbers or hairdressers or in not white collar jobs, they'll be quite happy for their kids to follow suit. Now, barber is an example, yeah, which they do all right. Like financially, they do okay. But
Mm,
obviously, white collar people are not gonna admit that, hang on, this barber makes more money than I do. You know, someone
yeah.
someone with a doctorate is not gonna admit that a taxi driver is able to make, be it working more hours or whatever, yeah, is able to make more money than him.
You know what the funny thing is, right? I'll tell you two things. First of all, Sister Robina says people have too many expectations. I've experienced it since I set up my matrimonial page. They expect perfection, and I can believe it. I can believe it. Only
I'll
just Ali, just yeah. So Ali, when you put your application in, just a notch less than perfection, please. Yeah,
do you know what it is?
break the mold, break the
Oh
trend.
man, I've
If you
got, you
don't
know
do
what?
it, we've got to break that. We've got to break the mold. Anyway, only just 2 days ago, was it 2 days? No, it was on, yeah, Saturday. Saturday evening, I went out with some friends for a meal after a long time, some old school friends. We hadn't met each other for many years. And one of them was telling me how, because they didn't go to university. After school, they left and went straight into work. Right now, mashallah, they have a very good couple of businesses involving cars, properties, and all sorts of different things. And he was mentioning how you talk about sowing the seed, and they were talking to he was talking to his children. He was talking to me about how he told his children, look, alhamdulillah, we've been blessed with so much right now. Although we may not have passed with good grades at school or gone to university and got a high level education,
Mm,
we have managed to build X, Y, and Z. And right now, our income is no less than probably somebody of a white collar profession.
probably
Actually,
more.
probably more. And I said that to him, and he started, laughing out of
Yeah,
modesty. It comes back to your point, doesn't it? That
yeah,
there are people out there who they may not have gone through that process where you get a white collar kind of a profession and the way you live your life, but they have outperformed their educated counterparts.
Yeah. I think, you know what, there's, and
I would say you're an example of that as well. Not that you
barely got a GCSE. Honestly, it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
well, this is what I'm saying. You're an example of that as well. So it's not about academic education. And I've told my kids, look, you know what? If you don't go to university, I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a priority for me. There are certain things I would guide them with, and I'd say education is important. And depending on the career you choose for yourself would depend on whether any form of academic education is going to be a prerequisite or not. So the seed I've sown to them is halal rizq. Yeah, you earn halal. As I've said so many times in Punjabi, you know, Thoda khao, sutra khao. Yeah, clean. That's it. That's the whole thing, right? So I don't care what kind of profession it is, as long as you're enjoying yourself, it's decent halal income, and you've worked hard for it. You're working hard. You're not a bum. You're not going to rely on, you know, people to feed you when you've got the capability, the capacity, the aptitude, and, you know, to do it for yourself. You just need the attitude. You know what I mean?
You know what? There's, and you speak of halal rizq, and I think that's so important from an early age. For a child to understand the difference is imperative. But also, one thing that's sometimes lost, not in translation, but maybe in most cultures, is that knowledge is power. That doesn't just mean go to university and get a degree and you become knowledgeable. There's so many different ways to become knowledgeable. And I don't know, you might think different, Majid, but the way I see it in today's society, the knowledge you get in university from academia, from these books, is probably of the least value.
It depends.
Medical stuff aside, science aside, you know, specific things like that aside, but I'm not going to go into Mickey Mouse degrees and everything else, but life can teach you so much. Yeah.
Well, this is why I said that these people, there are so many people out there who have outperformed their educated counterparts because they've been smarter with their time. You know, like, talk about apprenticeship and stuff as an example, isn't it? Look, unless your profession requires you to have a specific qualification and the academic qualification, you don't need to go to university to become a professional in anything, right? There are commercial training programs which are far outweigh the value of degrees, academic degrees in the real world. People don't even know you don't have to go to university to become an accountant. They think you have to have an accounts degree because that's what careers advice told them when they were at school. What they don't know is that you don't have to go to get an IT degree if you want to become a network engineer in IT. You know, you do a Microsoft MCSA or an MCSE, or if you go into Cisco routers and networks and CCNAs and CCNPs, they're valued higher than degrees are.
Do you think, as a young person, the level of enthusiasm, commitment, dedication, sweat, blood, and tears is different when it's your own choice compared to when it's, you know, pushed and nudged and kind of shaped for you?
Good question.
You know, I think there's going to be a difference in the fruits, isn't there?
I think we have to appreciate that not everybody's the same. Not every child is going to be the same. Some children are going to need more pushing, nudging, given a certain direction than other children. Some children are going to need to be steered and geared than other children because they may not have realized their own potential. And if you're astute yourself as a parent or a carer or teacher, and you've realized that this child has certain skills which outperform his counterparts, then you know you think that this person could do great in certain ways, but they're thinking of something which you understand that are not going to be suitable or compatible with this person. If it's just because they enjoy it doesn't mean they're going to be good at it, right? So just because you enjoy something, it doesn't mean you're always going to be good at it. But if you enjoy something and you're good at it, but you just need that nudge to ask them the right question. A lot of the times, most parents don't even know how to parent their children in helping them to decide a career.
And we come back to the question of so what? Let's say you find yourself at this kind of crossroads where I don't know, you've got a skill in football or cricket, yeah? Or you've got a photographic memory. So, in these maths questions or whatever questions, you're scoring 100% because you've absolutely memorized everything. Or athletically, you're just, stand out. But you have zero interest in that. Now you've got the teacher or the parent sort of saying, look, son, you have something here. You've got a raw talent. This is something special. Now the child is saying, yeah, I get it, but it's boring. I've got no interest in it. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I guess up to a certain age.
You know what? This is a good question, because I've actually found myself in that situation just a couple of days ago. My 11-year-old came to me and said, "Abuji, can I have a chat with you on your own?" The first time he's ever said that, right? This is Musa I'm talking about, the maths whiz kid.
Oh, yeah.
The one who was up for the Guinness World Records stuff, that kid. And I understand what his skills are. I understand the things that he's good at, right? The question is, how far there's a difference between guiding, educating, nurturing, sowing seeds, and enforcing and forcing. There's a difference. There's a clear-cut difference between the two. Now, he told me that he actually got quite nervous about it because he wants to become an alim, right? He's got good memory, so he was, he didn't want to do hifz straight away because he wasn't sure whether he was going to, commit to the whole thing of revising every day, and he wanted to be sure of what he's doing. At the same time, he wanted to become a footballer. He's pretty good at football. And I was actually going to post this in our friends group, just the boys, not the Burton, the friends group that we have, to ask the question. Then I refrained and I thought, you know what, let me just dwell on this for a moment. And I was actually quite nervous, not nervous. He was quite emotional because I felt like he didn't want to disappoint me more than anything else. And I put my arm around him. I said, look, dude, enjoy yourself. Now's not the time to stress. Right, you can become an alim, inshallah, in the next few years. Now, you're not even old enough to be accepted in a school where they would start teaching you that
so
curriculum.
Where did the football come into it? Then is that
he's wanting to join a football club, and I said to him, look, have a look out. Where are the clubs? What timings they are, and what the costs are involved, and how regular you have to go. But just be mindful that I may not be able to take you all the time whenever there's a match. So if the more local it is, or if you know somebody else who goes there and you can grab a lift, then that's something. So I wanted to plant the seed to say, look, sometimes when you want something, you have to work for it. You have to do your own research. Go and do the research. If he could do that, if he did the research, found out the prices, found out the locations, find out the timings, wrote the emails himself, right? Then I know he's serious about it.
He's 11, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What to say? I mean, I'm not going to.
My daughter's 18, and she's just about at the point where she can make her own doctor's appointment. And you've got an 11-year-old writing emails.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong?
No, I think, look, you know what?
Where does this conversation go then? So he, on his mind, he wants to be an alim. Is it you that wanted him to be a footballer, or was it him that wanted him?
He wants to be a footballer.
So he wants to be a footballer, and he wants to be an alim. What do you think it was that he was worried about that might disappoint you? Was he heading down a sort of different path prior to that?
No. Mashallah, he's very
so
good
at maths. Is that what it is?
No, I think you know what, he's a very quiet kid usually, and he likes his own company. He enjoys playing football. He's very competitive. This is why he came second in the world for his age group in the Guinness World Record attempt for the TT Rockstar stuff. At the same time, he has this desire to do well and learn more of the deen, right? Because he's good at that as well. He enjoys it. He's good at that. He enjoys football. He's good at that. His question was, where's the balance? If I do one, do I have to give up the other? This is why he started becoming nervous about, I'm not sure about my career. I don't know which way to go. So I said to him, look, you've joined the madrasa. You do your research about football clubs, find out which ones they are, find out where they are, find out if you can go nearby, if you can get a lift money, find out timings, prices, and everything like that. Now, if he does that, it gives me an indication that he's serious about it. And that way I will invest in him. If he can't even be asked to do that, why should I, move on to the next stage? I was making my own appointments by that age as well. So I'm sure he can, sometimes we underestimate kids.
we were, it's said that we grew up in a different time and it was a different world and all of that. And to some extent, I agree. I understand. I do understand the world has changed in the last 10 years, 20 years, but, it's not changed to the extent where you're right. Children can still, go to the shop and pick up groceries. They can call their own doctor. They can, do these things.
There's a couple of really interesting comments here on the live feed. Sister Rubina says, a few weeks ago, an 18-year-old committed suicide because he was going to start university, which he didn't want to. Let your children do what they want to do. Don't push them. And Aisha says, I feel a parent has to guide as we got more experience in life and we know what works and what doesn't. Now, in both situations, first of all, I would say there needs to be a balance to be struck. In some cases, children need to be guided. Some children need to be guided more than others. Not every child is the same. Yeah. But I'm not up for the idea that we always know better. I'm not. I think that we don't let our children be children enough sometimes, or explore their own interests enough. Now, there always has to be a value set which you don't break the barriers of, right? There are values which you don't breach. If you're serious as a parent, then it's something interesting. My sister says, would you like to see me being tortured in the afterlife because I didn't do my job properly with you? Yeah, as an example. And actually, we often forget that this is a temporary life. Our main life starts afterwards. How we or what we do in this life is more important in preparing the after. So sometimes, yes, I don't agree with parents who force their children to go to university to the extent that they'll end up committing suicide. But then I would question the communication between the parent and the child.
It might not even have been that. We don't know if it was forced. It's look.
No, if it is hypothetical,
you've got an 11-year-old,
hypothetical,
right? And
if
he's
it is
very wary of upsetting you or disappointing you. Now, had he not spoken to you, where does that leave him, isn't it?
Yeah, and you have to open that channel. You have to open that communication channel.
Yeah.
Sadly, there are parents who don't want to have conversations with their children, and you think to yourself, why the hell did you give birth to them in the first place? These are responsibilities. We have to execute our responsibilities with utmost care, love, affection, all of these things. But I don't, at the same time, what Aisha says about, because we know what works and what doesn't. I've come across parents who think they know what works and what doesn't, but they don't know what works and what doesn't. They don't know how things work sometimes. For example, some parents might have this certain idea about university that's going to bring their child the best career in the world, but actually it's not.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't mean they know.
Summarize that is, Majid, I think initially it's think of like an hourglass model, right? The sand one where you kind of say you've just slipped it. Is it an hourglass? Am I thinking of something else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you start off with 100% guidance. Yeah, all sand is at the top. Now, as the kid develops in their years and matures and grows, obviously your guidance is not going to remain at 100%. It has to gradually dip. Now, the only thing you have to be then careful of is the extreme where you start from 100% guidance and you slowly let them find their way. Don't let it get to zero. That, honestly, that's my own feelings is that always hold back that sort of 10%, 5%, 2%, no matter how old your child will. Say your child is 37, yeah? It should never go to zero, but it can't stay at 100. That it just can't.
Yeah, some parents don't know how to let go
Yeah.
either.
And
They haven't. You know what? Well, you know what this comes down to, um, a lack of emotional intelligence.
yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to handle their emotions. Sometimes they want to give somebody the freedom, like a child, the freedom to make their own decisions. But when they don't make that decision which fits them, they'll lash out. They're like, I did it, didn't I? I gave them that decision. I let them have their chance, didn't I? It's not
Yeah.
my fault. And the blame is always on someone else rather than themselves.
What do
Cherry
you think
says,
are the
think
biggest
some
investments?
parents.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, you're breaking up for a second there, Ali. Yeah, you broke up for a second. Just before you get to that, let's just read out a comment from Cherry. She says, think some parents try to force or live their dreams through their children, and it puts pressure on the child to not want to fulfill their own ambitions and dreams in fear of letting down their folks. 100%. That happens so many times. It's a poignant point. Definitely, Cherry. You see that a lot. It's sad, but you've got to let a child live through their individuality, rather than force things on them.
Do you know the main thing there that's gone unaddressed is the parents' internal issues, their own kind of, whether it's psychological state or whatever, but they've got those loose ends, they've got those own problems. They've had an issue with their life, or they've had a dream unfulfilled for whatever reason. Maybe their parents didn't let them fulfill their dream, and now say I wanted to be a footballer, but my dad forced me to go to college and university to become a doctor or an accountant or whatever. Now I might be going through something in life, and now I'm trying to force my son to become a footballer.
Okay, that's an interesting question, a point actually, because Aisha actually mentions that. She says, in terms of guidance, for example, if your son wants to pursue football or my son wants to pursue it, in that situation, I'll be real about his skills, whether he will make it as a professional or not. Question is, would you do that about any profession, even if it wasn't football?
And what age can you do that?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
And I think this is all going to be subjective and very unique to each child. Some children may be a bit more mature in understanding what you're saying and establishing their the boundaries, or understanding their skills and interests. Some kids might not get it. Some child will go around tell everybody, I'm going to become a doctor. I want to become a doctor, and they can't even calculate 2 + 2. These are expectations put on them by the parents. I don't know how to put it, because the unrealistic expectations sometimes people put on their kids, and that a lot of the times has and similarly, let's just not talk about parents and kids. What about spouses, husbands and wives? Sometimes partners or spouses, they have this expectation from their other partner. And also, part of me thought there's a reason why you've chose this topic, Ali, about sowing seeds. I wonder if you're wanting to sow any particular kinds of seeds with anybody, and you're wanting ideas of how to do
seeds, man. I can't even tell you, bro.
Subliminal messaging and all that.
But yeah, what do you think are the biggest investments that we make in our life? Children, I would say, straight away. That's one of the career path. Business. What else is there? What else are we sowing? What else?
As a theist, as a Muslim, I would say the biggest investment needs to be made in our afterlife. So what we do here, that determines where we go in our afterlife. That's the biggest investment. Now, you can live your day-to-day life, whether it involves money, finance, business, children, relationships, if they're done according to, being fair and just as the religion expects, then you've got nothing to worry about. But if you're not, then you've got a lot to worry about.
Okay. What about
The
later
biggest
life?
later life.
What do you think what have you come across? I'm not saying you're in later life. You're still a young lad,
Mm,
by the way.
thank
But
you. I know I am. You don't need to
say,
convince me.
so you've gone now. You've had kids. You've set up family home and all of this, and your career or your means of income are done. Now what? Because a lot of people resort to gardening, and I think that's a bit stereotypical. And I know you're sowing seeds for fruit and veg, and you've got your allotments,
You
but
never know, Ali. You know what? I think you're still in your mid-30s, right? Um, you're a lot younger at the moment, and you always will be. It's not
what do
like
you
at
mean
the
at
moment.
the
At the
moment?
moment,
Am I going
and,
to
and
catch up?
obviously,
Or what do you mean?
you might do. You might do.
I don't think there's I don't think
I
there's
might
any
stop.
overtaking.
I might stop at some stage, and you might take over. Um, the point being, as we grow older, more mature, I'd like to say, our
Or
thoughts
older.
and yeah, our thoughts, our desires, our ambitions sometimes do change and evolve. Yeah. So you say this now, but you don't know in 10, 15, 20 years from now, that might be exactly what you want in your life. You might
Mm,
not be in an allotment, but if you could imagine yourself in the traditional gra in Pakistan with the manji out and lassi coming in, and you're looking after your ped bore, it's different, isn't it? It's a different kind of a
mm,
lifestyle. Maybe you got some mudja there and everything, some cows, buffaloes, and looking after sheep and whatnot. It just might be a different kind of a region, but
mm,
essentially doing the same thing.
mm,
There's a science experiment which took place, and they did this kind of a survey of end of life, and they went into this hospital and they interviewed a nurse who looked after people towards the end of their lives.
mm.
And they asked her, what is it which people talk about most when they know they're about to leave this world? Because you're not going to BS then, are you?
No.
You haven't got time to BS. You're gonna say it how it is. And she says, the most common thing which people say at the end of their life is, I wish I lived a life true to myself rather than what other people expected of me.
Wow.
Let that sink in about seeds, sowing the right stuff, and what kind of things to put in forward as your purpose and what kind of seeds to sow. Question is, are you just sowing for yourself or others too? The responsibility, if you're sowing for others, there are responsibilities for them over them as well as yourself.
Do you think we can't this look? We're in 2000 and whatever we're in. Surely this can't be the first time in humanity's history where we're saying to our children or even ourselves, you know, go and prosper, go and live your life, go and do what you want. Okay, in the last couple of generations, we might have seen a bit of too much of strictness or staunchness or whatever, and there's been a lot of pushing and forcing and shaping. But I don't think it's always been like that. What do you reckon?
No, because you see, as time has evolved, from as far as I could tell, communities have become more mixed and cosmopolitan, so to speak. Communities, nations, different backgrounds, cultures, they have become more mixed in different regions of the world,
Mm,
where you have spent most of your life amongst people who look the same, dress the same, talk the same, do everything pretty much the same. The chances of you going against the grain is going to be less than somebody who's in a different part of the world, where although your ancestral background shows that you would have done X, Y, or Z as you've grown up and as you've grown older,
mm,
but the influence of the outside world or a different part of the world has given you other ideas, there's gonna be a chance that you might be doing something different to what your ancestors or your parents did. So as time's gone on, yes, there has been more mixing of communities, more mixing of cultures, which is it has its pros and cons. You have to
mm,
take the good with the bad. Not to say any culture is worse than another. It depends on your set of values. But if you have a set of values to live by, then obviously you're going to measure every culture by your values. Now, are values based on some theological reasonings, or is it just a cultural reasoning from where you originate from? That again plays a role in how you view the world and life, and your own personal experiences, how much you've been educated, where you've been educated, what have you learned, who have you learned from, whether it's just been sheer Google, whether it's been the world around you, whether it's been uncles, aunties, cousins, if you didn't have any of them as you were growing up, whether it's just been neighbors, whether it's TV, whether it's YouTube. All that kind of stuff is going to have an impact on how you view the world, because everybody has a version of the world which is unique to them.
Mm. Wow. How have we almost come towards the end of our show already?
Oh, we have already. Wow. So we've been discussing. Sorry, you got tips on what?
Tips on what to sow. As a 40-year-old.
As a 40-year-old, you're not even 40 yet.
Well, eventually.
You see, when you reach 40, we'll come to that discussion. You've still got a few years, but I think from what I know of you, alhamdulillah, you've sown some good seeds, and may they blossom and give you the fruits of your labor in the halal way, inshallah. This has been about what to sow. And we've kind of touched on, why we want to sow in the first place. I think the next episode would make sense to be talking about how sow, as you suggested a couple of days ago, as a follow-up to this, how to sow. So depending on what we're sowing, how will that look like, or how would that take place? Whether it's in business, whether we're sowing the seed to grow a business, whether we're sowing something, or ideas or values or anything like that with our families or kids or anything like that, or the way we sow anything for a future in anything, how can it be done? I think it'll be a good discussion to be had.
It already sounds like a good discussion to be honest. Now that we know what to sow, it's just a case of how to go about it. And I think there's going to be some interesting points on how people go about it, because not everybody, as much as people can share a goal,
not everyone's going to agree with how to bring up kids, for example. Not everyone's going to agree with what kind of values to instill in them. Not everyone's going to agree that you let your kid go down the football route, or let him do something different. You know what I mean? It's going to be quite subjective.
It's always amazed me how people can have the same goal yet such different paths.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Cool. Right. On that note, we'll continue that discussion. But for now, it's been an hour, and that's our time to tick off. Hope you had a good listening experience of this topic, and we look forward to having you on the next topic. Hopefully with your contributions, because these contributions have been very, very good, very enlightening at the same time. Until next time, 7:00 tomorrow, next Tuesday, at the same time, same place. I know. Why did I do that? I think I'm getting really excited about coming back. I want to come back straight away. So until next week, next Tuesday, 7:00, 7 p.m. Over and out from us.